Can you see me? This one.
That's the one. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have the old book.
Yeah, I think so because it doesn't have both parts. Cool. All right. Well, let's you know, kind of take the first page and talk about it. And do you guys, just to get an idea, Raquel, have you been working on this, or where are you at as far as?
I've played it before. It's not as clean as I want. There's a few parts that just always give me fits. So, I mean, rhythm-wise and note-wise, I'm okay. It's not clean.
Okay, so mostly the getting it cleaner is something you'd like to maybe improve on. Is there any particular sections that you're having trouble with, or?
I never have measure numbers on this thing. On page 2 of the old version, the second line, the beginning of that whole section always gives me fits.
Okay, with all the crossovers.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, that's a classic part there. That's easy to get not so clean. So, okay, we'll talk about that. Thornton, do you have any initial tips, you know, as far as how you kind of present this to students? Do you work on like staccato, different things like that? Maybe give your insight a little bit on this piece.
Well, I use the martelé strokes. Are they familiar with that?
Yeah, let's talk about that. If you want to start the class with that, sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the way I was trained and taught with it. Is the martelé is a fast, slow kind of stroke. It's not really a staccato. It's not really legato. It's a kind of combination, sort of like you'd almost you remember the Vivaldi concerto, you know, almost like that martelé stroke also. Like that one, more like kind of. I say it like it's the bow goes suddenly like a surge and then slows down, and a surge and slows down.
Yeah, anything that's kind of more Baroque era, Bach, you know, Mozart, Haydn, stuff like that is more kind of detached. It's not so legato. You got your staccato in a lot of spots, but then anything else that's non-staccato is not really played very connected. It's a little bit detached.
Yeah, you got that. You got measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Measure 6, which has you know, those the 2 eighth notes. They're staccato. Of course, you're right. There are some that are.
Yeah, and Thornton, I like students to kind of hang out, you know, at the frog area in a lot of parts. What's your take on that?
I second that too. I really, I used to have a habit. I just want to share this with you. My teachers would always be after me. They say I'm always playing in the upper part of the bow. You've heard that familiar story from other teachers, right? It's better in this case, in a lot of cases, to play from the middle to the lower part of the bow because it's more control, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's easier to spring the bow, get out the string a little bit in certain spots when it starts to get faster. It's just a good area to play in this sort of style of music. So if you guys are playing mid upper bow, I suggest kind of coming down a little bit. So yeah, as far as like off the string, Thornton, do you have any exercises for the students as far as you know, getting the bow off cleanly?
You mean lifting or more spiccato? Because there's no really spiccato. You mean staccato, or just mean?
Yeah, spiccato off the string, because there's a lot of parts in here where I think
sure.
that can be done.
Yeah, I'll show you one. What I do is, one of my teachers at Eastman School of Music showed me that you find the balance point, the balance point of the bow, like, you know, scales, like the old scales that you used to weigh, like in postage scales. I don't know if anybody would be familiar with that or not, but you take your bow and you try to find the balance point of the bow. Michael, you're probably familiar with this, but maybe
yeah,
not.
absolutely. That's the springiest part of the bow for sure.
Right, and so that's what I do. I try to balance it, and have my students find the bounce. And this point is where it would bounce the easiest to bounce with the bow. Every bow varies, though, right? I mean, some bows are heavier than others, right, Michael?
Yeah, every bow has different densities, so some are going to be just a little higher or lower than others. So it's important to know kind of where your balance point is.
Mm-hmm. And then I sort of take the bow, and once I find that spot, and I place it on the string first in that area, and then I kind of just let the bow kind of bounce by itself. I'll start out slow, like just. Have you seen what a pendulum looks like? You know, on a clock swinging back and forth, tick tock like that. I think of it as kind of a pendulum. Slowly like this, and then a little faster. Not to be confused with ricochet. Do you know what ricochet is, right? That's ricochet, but
yeah, I think a big thing that students do when they first learn, you know, spiccato is they try to force it. So
force it.
So you
it's
know,
got to be just a gentle drop, basically. Wouldn't you say that, Michael? Wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's the way to get it to be consistent and to be clean is to let the bow do the work. So this is where having a nice springy bow is really helpful. If you have like a stiff bow, like a fiberglass or something, it's not going to work. So having a nice bow and then letting it do the work for you. So you kind of just let it drop, and then you kind of control it as it comes up with the index, with the front of the finger to kind of guide it. If you don't do that, it's going to be inconsistent. So you have to let the bow do the work. So if you guys want to try doing this, try finding the balance point and trying just to get that clean sound. So.
Right, and I noticed that. How do you pronounce? Is it?
Call me Sue.
Okay, I noticed that you were using too much. You're trying too hard with the bow.
Yeah, that's definitely a common thing.
I know it's a common thing.
Yeah, and try to think, you know, guys, you know, extension also. Try not to use too much arm when you're doing spiccato.
Right. Did you notice how we're using it more like just more of a wrist type of, right?
Oh.
And don't bounce so high either. Bounce lower bounce. Right? Correct. For control.
One thing you guys could try. I like to do this with my students is have their, you know, wrist against the wall to kind of really force them to use the small muscles in the hand. So if you guys want to try this, hold the violin, you know, with no hands. Take your left hand and hold onto your wrist, and just try to do this exact thing. But this is going to force you to use your small muscles to get the bow to bounce. So if you're having trouble doing that, you're probably using too much big muscles, too much arm, or your wrist is too stiff. You want to have your wrist real flexible, real easy to move. Anything else, Thornton, to add to that?
Well, I think it's just, again, just small movements. Trying not to bounce too high. You can start out just very slow bounce, like a little faster, like that, instead of using. And I actually like your technique, Michael, of holding the just below the wrist. I think that's a great idea. I have my students actually when I first start teaching them to use, you know, I tell them not to use much of the upper arm, but the lower part of the arm, and I also have them. I actually have some of them lean their arm against the wall too. That also helps.
Yeah, that's great for extending and basically not using the upper arm. Sure.
I don't know if everybody's tried that before. That's a really good way to learn it too. To use less bow. Oh, the other thing is I was going to say is that obviously this goes really fast. At Vivace, you teach it very slowly. I actually teach it in four instead of cut time at first. You know, I do like 1 and 2 and 3, you know, almost like subdivide, you know, when we first learn it. But because it goes so fast, we've got to use really small bows. It's hard for a lot of students to understand that at first. You know, I used to think the same way, that I have to use all kinds of bow and all kinds of work, and you really don't have to work hard at all. The faster you go, as you know, the smaller bows you use, tiny bows.
Absolutely. And you don't want to pick at the staccato. That's one thing I find students do a lot. They kind of pick at it.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. You want to brush stroke more to get that solid sound. But you want it to be short, but you want to to brush. You also want to move the bow back and forth, not just pick it. You want to have it actually moving. So, not like that.
That's why I called it more like a martelé stroke, is, you know. But
so, yeah, Raquel?
What is the difference between a spiccato and a staccato on the violin?
staccato or spiccato? Which one are you saying?
What's the difference between the two?
Oh, I tell my students, it can sound crude, but I say that spiccato, they're both short. I just say spiccato is like spitting. It's off the string. It's like spitting. It's bouncy off the string. Both of them are short. Staccato is stuck. I call it stuck on the string. Staccato stuck. Like that. Staccato. They're both short. You know.
Yeah, if you have something that goes slow enough, it can be done on the string, but still done short. So I mean, if this is a passage like going slow on the string, but as it starts to speed up, and it starts to get off the string, that turns into a spiccato. So staccato is on the string, spiccato is off the string.
What's the notation difference so that you know which one they mean?
That's a very good question. My students ask me that all the time. It's more stylistic thing. Wouldn't you agree, Michael? Like, I mean, sometimes you can't always tell just by the notation, unless it's notated. Sometimes it is notated S-T-A-C-C-A-T-O or S-P-I-C-C, but sometimes it isn't either, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. It kind of, I think it depends a lot on the speed of the piece. If a piece is going fast, most of the time it's going to go spiccato if you have dots. When it's slower, it can be done on the string. Basically, you want it to be to where you can get it to sound clean. But when a piece starts to go fast, it doesn't sound clean unless it's off the string. You know, I can't do this passage fast on the string. It's not going to sound good. It needs to go off the string. So basically, it just kind of varies depending on the speed that you're going. That's how I would explain it. So wouldn't you agree, Thornton?
Yeah, I would. But I mean, also, it's stylistic too. I would think so, because like Mozart, if you're playing Mozart, there's not as many staccato. There's more spiccato. I think so. Just because of the time and era. I mean, the classical period of time that it was written.
Absolutely. So, yeah, Raquel, any other questions?
No, keep going.
What's that?
No, keep going.
Okay. All right. Does anybody want to play a little bit of it, and we can give you guys some tips? Or that's one way to do it. I know, Raquel, you mentioned the second line of the piece, page 2. You could talk about that.
Hey, but I think even we only talk. I mean, I only practice this part, this piece, because that's what I was taught last week.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what we worked on last week. Do you have some questions about that, Zoo? Feel free to. This is just the piece we're doing this week. we move real fast, I guess, don't we? Anything in particular you have questions about the number 3, the one we did last week?
No, I just think to practice more. I probably have another lesson with you on Thursday.
Let us know if you have questions. So there's a lot of things in this piece, number 7, that are important, on top of just the notes and the rhythms. Obviously, that's the first thing to get down is the notes and the rhythms. But yeah, there's a lot of accents. There's a lot of dynamics. There's a lot of parts that are, tricky to get clean, like Raquel was mentioning. So yeah, I mean, I can play a little bit of it so you guys can hear the way that I would play it. Maybe that would help, especially that section you mentioned, Raquel. But yeah, maybe pay attention to, the style that I put into it, the accents, the dynamics. But yeah, a lot of it's played at the frog. So I mean, try to hang out, as much as you can in this area of the bow.
Wait.
Yeah.
Okay, so those dots are staccato or spiccato?
Which parts? Where?
No, just at the beginning when it has dots, those are staccato.
Well, everybody interprets it different. I've heard Isaac Stern perform it, the late Isaac Stern perform it. You know, in Carnegie Hall at the, there was a film out called The Music of the Heart. I don't know if everybody's seen it. It's a great documentary with Meryl Streep in it with a Suzuki teacher. Did anybody see that?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, when he's performed it, I mean, like there's different interpretations. He does it more martial, but then another type of, I mean, a performer might perform it a little bit differently. So there's.
Would you agree, Thornton, that whatever you do, the other part has to do the same thing, right?
Exactly. Right. One person can't be doing exactly. One person can't be doing martial and the other one's doing spiccato or whatever. Right? Exactly.
Yeah. See, I mean,
but if you listen to different recordings, have you heard any recordings of it?
Oh yeah. There's a lot of recordings of it out there.
What I'm saying is there are different interpretations. I mean, still.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I like to play it kind of with a brush stroke, with a staccato, a little bit off the string, depending on how fast I go. I'll just give you kind of my style of it, and maybe Thornton can play his style of it. I mean, we might have different interpretations of it. That's kind of my style of it, trying to stay as much as I can at the frog. Anything, Thornton, on that? Do you want to play a little bit of it and kind of?
Well, it's a little different, but I mean, it's not right or wrong. I mean, it's just interpretation. I stay a little bit more on the string with it when I perform it. But I go like what I was saying. Martial is more like. Like that?
Yeah, that's a little bit more on the string, sure.
More on the string. But, I mean, that's not a right or wrong. I'm just saying that's more the way I was trained, as far as playing it more martial.
So,
yeah, Zoo?
Yeah, while you guys were playing, I just wonder, like, when should I use vibrato?
Yes.
I wasn't quite sure, like, because I see the sign that it's like more than that sign.
Yeah, I mean, vibrato as much as you can, definitely on the longer notes. But yeah, there's pretty much not a restriction on, what's a vibrato. But yeah, I mean, for like staccato, the short notes, it's not as important, I think, as definitely the longer notes, Not saying you can't vibrato too. So yeah, anything that's a longer note, definitely vibrato. Thornton, your thoughts?
No, I agree too. It's hard to vibrate on every single note as it goes fast.
Yeah.
I will say this much, that the sort of the difference in styles of playing this is that when you go really fast and you're doing more spiccato, it probably makes it cleaner and more accurate when it's played that way, staccato, as versus when you play more martial, it's more a singing kind of more. You see what I mean? Like more melodic and singing, I guess.
I noticed in the section A, the solo part, there's some intense crossovers there, so that might be a good place to kind of talk about maybe getting a clean sound. So right there, you're crossing things and coming back kind of rapidly. We're getting a little bit of a surface noise here. Let me mute here. So one thing to practice there, I always have students do what I call the rocking bow drill, where they basically try to rock across the strings and not make a sound. So if you're grabbing the bow too tight, if your arm is tense, you're going to get kind of this sound when you're crossing strings, especially, you know, it's easier to do at the tip, but that's a section there where it's easy to get an unclean sound because of the crossovers. So what you can do is practice that while you go to the E string, trying to get a sound like that. Thornton, thoughts?
No, I like that idea. What I do is
Sorry.
I try to remove all distractions and just concentrate on one area, one thing. And what I do is, instead of actually playing the notes, I'll just do the string, open strings. Like, you know, it's isn't it? Are we at measure 27? Is that what it is? Going to 28? Is that what it is?
Yeah, the solo part, the first violin solo.
So it goes from E string to D string, right? And then E string to D string. It's always E string to D string, right?
Yep.
So what I do sometimes in teaching is real elementary is just I don't use the fingerings at all. I just try that rocking just like you just said, but without the fingerings. See what I'm saying? Like to go from E to D like that. Just to practice that stroke without just take away the fingerings entirely and just practice the open strings. See what I'm saying? And then I add the fingering to it.
Yeah, and try to use the same amount of bow for each of the 16th notes that follow that passage there. You know, to get a clean sound. Try not to use like a very little bow for some of the 16th notes. I find that with some students. So, say at the frog. So try to use the same amount of bow for each of those 16th notes. Like that.
Where do you find that tension is most likely to occur when you're working on something like that? Because I found I can rock the bow just fine. I can kind of get the pitch and everything just fine. And then I put it all together and it just falls apart. And I feel like I get intimidated by it. And so I get tight somewhere. Where do you think the tension is probably hiding?
I mean, tension can come from anywhere. You know, it could be grabbing the bow too tight. A lot of times tension comes from crossing strings, grabbing it too much to get over and come back. So you really have to have that idea and that feel of not having any sort of tension in the arm when you're crossing. That's really common. The other thing too, like I just mentioned, if you don't use enough bow, there could be some sort of reason for that because you're grabbing too tight. So try to spread things out more. You're going to get a cleaner sound that way. Obviously, when it goes really fast, you can only use so much bow, but try to use as much as possible for the speed you're going. So try to just spread things out, stay relaxed, use index, keep the wrist flexible. Thornton, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. What I would do, you're saying about the 16th notes, I might separate. Go back to show me, oh yeah. So the solo section there at pick up to 26, is that what you're talking about? That part where you're talking about where that part, right?
Yeah.
I might just practice this part only, just this part over and over. And then I get those down, just the movements. And then I might practice just the 16th notes only by themselves, you know, for to clean it up, to make it clean.
Yeah.
So isolate certain sections of the melody itself.
Yeah, that's a great point. Anytime you can isolate sections, that's a really good point. Anytime you're feeling like you're not getting it clean enough.
Do you think there should be a slight accent on the D? I find I tend to just do that. I kind of like lean on that. Is that something that I should be avoiding, or is that fine?
I think what you're doing probably is you're anticipating the crossover, so you're kind of playing it a little bit differently because you know that you have to get to the E string. So that's kind of what I was saying about using the same amount of bow and keeping it consistent. what I would suggest if you're feeling like you're doing that is slow it down and focus on getting it consistent. So even just those two notes. So, but yeah, you're probably changing your technique a little bit for that D. So try not to do that.
I feel like it's a goal, you know, dun 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 duh. It's like too much, you know.
Well, I want to answer one thing. When you talk about accents, this is later on when you put in both parts together. Accents can be useful in teaching. I have some of my students place accents on certain strong parts of the song to keep people together, to keep the ensemble together. What do you think of that, Michael?
Yeah, that can be good. There are a lot of specified accents in here. But yeah, I mean, as far as like getting it together with another player, another part, sure, that can be helpful, you know, to make sure you're hitting that, you know, that beat right on at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like a simple piece to play in some respects, but when you actually put it together, it's a whole different project.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful piece when it's put together with the other part.
I mean, it's genius. It's sheer genius. I mean, how he wrote it. It's the other thing later on, I guess, when we talk about it more advanced techniques and things is also the phrasing. It's how important the phrasing is. You know, as far as like tapering the phrases at the beginning and end of each, instead of it making it just sound mechanical, playing it all the way through like an exercise, actually shaping the piece.
Absolutely. Very good. Any other questions or comments, guys, so far? So yeah, Raquel, you mentioned that part, I think right before B, right? That section gave you some trouble. All the crossovers.
Can you call them measure out number measure?
We don't have measure numbers in this.
Okay, all right, because this doesn't have this is I'm at a disadvantage because this has the measure numbers. It doesn't have the
letters, really.
The letter numbers. Letter
So
names.
this part. See if you can find this part, Thornton. That part.
Yeah.
That part really takes some slow practice. I remember first learning this piece and definitely having to work on that section.
Yeah, that's hard.
Second position is good there.
Is that it? Where it goes? That part?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the second position is good. I don't know if you guys have that in your parts, but second position.
Well, they have it. They have revised here. They have third position to second position to first position.
Yeah, I have third, second, first.
That's right. Same here.
Yeah. So I think that's a good fingering. You guys.
While we're talking about that, I recommend a book highly. I don't know if you've tried it. It's called Position Etudes by Dr. Suzuki.
All I have is the Introducing the Positions book.
It's called Position Etudes. Position Etudes is what it's called.
Writing
a lot of my students use it, and it's real helpful.
And it's by Suzuki?
By Dr. Suzuki.
Okay.
Okay. I haven't seen that book. I use the Sit Etudes a lot for positions, learning positions.
You use what?
Sit, S-I-T-T.
Oh, okay.
It's but Introduction to the Positions is good too. I use that one a lot for students too.
Yeah, that's a good book too. It's just part of that Suzuki book training. It's just called Position Etudes, and it's a real. It takes you all the way through all the position. Well, it goes up to seventh position. I know. How high do you teach the positions and everything? Michael?
I do. I mean, we go as high as 11.
11.
So yeah, that's a really good section, guys, to practice. I would suggest doing that over and over again. Just do it, dropping this.
Which line?
Sorry?
Sorry, which line, which section?
It's, I can give you a measure number probably
Yeah.
here. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15,
2 measures before B.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 30. 1, 2, 32, 3, 4, 5, 6. Measure 36.
That's what I got. 35, 36 right in there. Yeah.
Yeah, measure 36. So that's a good practice spot. So just do this over and over again. That's good practice there.
I found I can do it okay slow, but the minute I try to speed that part up, it's so frustrating.
We'll try it in different rhythms too. Try it in different rhythms, like going like that. You know, like that, and then go. What do you think of that, Michael?
Yeah, that's a really good way to practice any section. Yep, change the rhythms on the offbeats a little bit. It's a great way. Yep, that's good.
Because you know the psychology behind it, right? I mean, I know Michael does, but you know the psychology. If you make something more difficult than what it originally seemed to be, when you come back to what seemed difficult is not difficult at all anymore.
Yeah, I mean, even just doing that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, even just doing that a few times, I feel like it's a lot easier to play it fast, you know? You know? After doing that, you know?
And plus, it makes it fun. You know, it doesn't make it just a chore all the time. You can figure out maybe 100 ways to play that one passage. You know, play it backwards. What about playing it backwards, Michael?
I haven't done that one, but that could probably work. Any other questions? I would say that would be a good place to work too for next time. So cool. Well, I appreciate you, Thornton, coming in on the class. Everybody should grab a copy of his book. So this is the book he has. I've actually read half of it so far. It's really good, Thornton. I really like it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Coffee wasn't part of the class. No, I'm kidding.
Well, it's interviews with master teachers too around the United States too,
Okay.
and as well as over 25 years of teaching experience. And I've interviewed. It's a collection of interviews and observations of over 1,000 music students that I've taught and worked with.
I like the over exuberant, highly confident student.
You run across anybody?
I have some of those.
I can totally relate to like every single one of these.
Is this book geared more for teachers or for you as the student, kind of a thing?
Oh, I'd say the student. The teachers know a lot about it, but I think it really would be helpful for the student. Yeah.
I think it's good to know like what kind of personality you are, and then it kind of helps you to know what you need to work on, because every personality has its good and bad, you know.
Right, and I present effective and efficient strategies that you can use in the book to adapt to whatever your personality is. Keep in mind, though, usually we don't have just one personality. It's usually a combination of one or two.
Is the book violin specific or just generically music?
Oh, it's universal, which is great because it can